Welcome everyone to our first Chamber Speaker Series of 2024, at least I think it's still 2024, and we're so excited to present the future of energy. We've done this once before, a number of years ago, prior to that thing that kind of caused chaos there for a couple years that will remain unnamed, and so we're happy to bring it back. It's still a vibrant conversation in our community, within our government, within our society, and most importantly for today, within our industries. And so my name is Guy Achigrasso. I'm the president and CEO of the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce. And again, I just want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. Our speaker series and any event would not be possible without our sponsors. And so I want to thank our Future of Energy event partners, Phillips 66 and Alta Gas. We greatly appreciate your support in making this event possible. I would also like to recognize the mic and AV team, but more importantly for this event, our presenting sponsor, Veritas Media. Thank you, Josh, and your team that will for your ongoing support and hopefully make me look good, because this is a recorded presentation, as always. So at this time, I would like to invite our presenting sponsor, Josh Burdick, founder and CEO of Veritas Media, up to the podium.
Thank you all for being here today. It's such an honor to be the presenting sponsor for this series. It's something that I've been talking with Guy at the Chamber last year about, and really excited to get this going, and glad that you could be here. Veritas Media does video production locally for lots of businesses. We've worked in I see a lot of familiar faces out there in the crowd that we've done work for. And I'm a big proponent of show, don't tell. So I'd like to show a quick video that represents the work that we do in our community. Thanks. All right, well, I won't take up any more time, but thank you for, again, being here. And if you would like any more information, I'll be in the back after the presentation, and be happy to talk with you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, sir. It's always great to work with you and your team. And for those, eagle eyes that were watching the video, there were a couple chamber nods, and it's just been our pleasure to be able to work with Josh over years now, and including this space. And I'd be amiss if we didn't acknowledge this beautiful space. So the Silver Reef, thank you for hosting. Most people have, or at least maybe not most people, some people, from what you've told me this morning, this is your first time here in the theater room. And so we always like to showcase this room, and it's bigger if you move that wall, as just a great resource for this community. So Silver Reef, thanks for being our host today, and thanks for always taking care of us. Find my way in the agenda. Next up, I would like to invite Phillips 66 Ferndale Refinery Manager Carl Perkins to the podium. So yeah, Phillips 66, one of our event partners.
Thank you, Guy.
Absolutely.
So, Josh, I know with Veritas Media, I know that you helped partner with us when we did our 66th year anniversary back in 2020. So right now we're actually working for a celebration for our 70-year anniversary, which our first oil in a refinery was in October of, again, 1954, if you do the math. 1954, 70 years ago this October. Not nearly our oldest refinery, but again, it's our pleasure as Phillips 66 to be one of the sponsors for this Bellingham Chamber Speaker Series, the Future of Energy. I really enjoy this. This event aligns with our company mission of providing energy and improving lives, whether it's today or in the future. Fun facts to know and tell about Phillips 66. We actually, with a raise of hands, how many people have an iPhone in this room? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of people, I do as well. Not over 99% of every iPhone in the world has Phillips 66 product in it. For over almost going on 3 decades, Phillips is providing the carbon for batteries, and we have exclusive had the activity for the batteries for the iPhone throughout the world. And in addition to that, we're also going into EV batteries as well. So we have 2 refineries in our portfolio that provides that carbon for the batteries. We have 2 of our refineries that are processing pyrolysis oil, recycled material from plastics, into our refineries. We have 2 refineries that are making renewable jet, renewable diesel, okay? And you may not know that our 125-year-old refinery in San Francisco, previously called the Rodeo Refinery, is going through a full conversion of that facility to a renewable facility. And here in just a couple of months, it'll be at capacity over 800 million gallons of jet and diesel on an annualized basis, one of the world's largest there. So whether we're providing the energy from batteries or from green hydrogen or from jet, gasoline, renewables, again, we have that future there. If I just come local here, though, what are we doing here in this space of renewables out there? So as I just telling St. Paul a few minutes ago, beginning in the next couple of weeks, we will start supplying renewable diesel to the Whatcom County and the surrounding areas via our facilities there. And we're still progressing with a small green hydrogen plant that we have plans to have that online by the end of the year. So whether I mentioned again, whether it's through batteries, whether it's through green hydrogen, through renewable gasoline, renewable jet, renewable diesel, our company is committed to providing energy of the future with a lower carbon footprint, lower greenhouse emissions. It all aligns with that vision of providing energy and improving lives. So at this, I'd like to thank the Chamber for allowing us to sponsor, and I'm excited to hear from this panel today their future in energy here for Whatcom County. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl and Lisa and team. Next up, our second event partner for the Future of Energy. We have representatives from AltaGas. We have Andrea and Alex. I believe both of you are coming up. Perfect.
Greetings. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be one of the event sponsors. If you're interested in $1 billion of investment in capital clean energy infrastructure in Whatcom County, or perhaps if you would like to see more than 400 new construction jobs, including 40 full-time, ongoing, operational, professional positions filled with good-paying union labor, or if you care about meeting Whatcom County's aggressive decarbonization goals and the state of Washington's carbon emissions targets and the United States federal carbon reduction objectives, then I think you're going to want to hear a little bit more about our ALA Renewable Energy Ferndale Clean Hydrogen Project. I am Andrea McNamara Doyle, and I am really excited to have the opportunity to be a part of the future of energy in Whatcom County. I'm born and raised here, but have spent the last couple of decades down in the Olympia area, working at that intersection of environment and energy. And it was this exciting clean hydrogen project that allowed me the opportunity to come back home. So without any further ado, I want to introduce my colleague, Alex Skordetsky, who is the Director of Emerging Ecosystems at AltaGas and ALA Renewable Energy, who is going to give you a sneak peek into the very early plans for our large green hydrogen project in Ferndale. We'll be sharing more at an upcoming chamber event, the event on May 8th, the State of the County luncheon, or breakfast, I think it is at that point. If you can't wait until then to learn more after you hear Alex, we're going to have our whole team out at our booth after today's event. Thank you so much. Alex?
Thanks, Andrew. We're really pleased to be sponsoring this event. Some of you may know AltaGas completed its acquisition of Petrogas in 2022, and we own and operate the Ferndale LPG export terminal. We view the terminal, the facility, as a strategic outlet point for North American LPG exports to serve the high-demand Far East market with faster shipping times than those exports leaving the U.S. Gulf Coast. In addition to integrating Petrogas into our midstream business, we created ALA Renewable Energy to participate in the energy transition within the Pacific Northwest. And through that entity, we are working with the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Association in the DOE Department of Energy Hydrogen Hubs program. We're actually one of 8 projects selected for award within the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub. And we're developing the Ferndale Clean Hydrogen Project. The project will be located at the former Intalco smelter. It'll rejuvenate the area. It'll create jobs and investment, bring local investment along with it. The project will produce up to 100 metric tons a day of clean electrolytic hydrogen for refinery use, for peaking power plant use, and as well for distribution along the I-5 corridor to hydrogen fueling stations that are being developed there. We're really pleased to be working with the Department of Energy, the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Association. We believe the entire Hydrogen Hubs program will help place Whatcom County at the cutting edge of the energy future. Like Andrea said, we'll be sharing a lot more about our project at the upcoming State of the City and County event on May 8th. We encourage everyone to attend that event. But in the meantime, come talk to us. Thanks.
I am just going to go home because I have sponsors promoting future events. That's great. That is the epitome of success for chamber people. So just like, great. So with that, thank you again. How about a round of applause for all of our sponsors? So a little bit of housekeeping while our panelists make their way down. All of you have question cards at the front. It looks like not everybody always has questions, so take them from the empty seats if you have multiple questions, and you can ask questions at the end. via the cards, and we'll be by to pick them up throughout the panelists' presentations. But on behalf of the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce, I'm excited to introduce and welcome to the stage our panel of industry experts from the energy sector. So, as they make their way down, because I can't see you, Brian Heinrich of Puget Sound Energy. We have Brad Barron with Barron Heating, AC, Electrical, and Plumbing. We have Sean Hinton with Cascade Natural Gas. We have Pam Brady with BP. And we have Aaron Padak of Andgar Mechanical. How about a round of applause for all of our panelists? And just gonna let everybody file in here. Please be careful, because there's a tight squeeze behind here. And I think Brian Heinrich, Puget Sound Energy, you are up first. I would say maybe from here. And then for Q&As, it might be easier to do down there. So welcome up, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian Heinrich, Puget Sound Energy, and pleasure to be here. I'm going to be looking over my shoulder and hopefully asking the folks at Veritas to tab through the PowerPoint. I think go ahead and move forward. So just a little bit about PSE. I think most folks are aware we're Washington's largest and oldest utility. We serve 1.5 million customers in 10 counties across the state. We're really proud of the fact that much of what we provide is affordable, safe, reliable power. And as we look at the future, that is only going to grow. And as that largest, oldest utility, we're at the forefront of the clean energy transition. And I want to move forward to slide 3 and kind of stay on it for just a second, if we could, because this is going to inform, one more, please. Yeah, let's stay here for just a second. So as the title there says, Washington has enacted some of the most ambitious climate policies in the country. And so that really brings us to where we're at today. And I want to talk about some of these, some of the regulatory environment, because that is going to inform where we're headed as a company, where many of you in the business community are going to head as a business as you grow, and where consumers are going to play a role in this transformation. So Clean Energy Transformation Act was passed in 2019. It requires that as a utility, we're carbon neutral by 2030 and 100% clean by 2045. There's a whole host of requirements that go along with that. Some of you may be aware that we are a heavily regulated industry, and so anything that we do has to pass through the UTC for approval. And so this, the CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, is, as the title would say, it's transformational, what it means to the utility. In 2021, the Climate Commitment Act was passed, the CCA. It establishes a comprehensive program to reduce carbon pollution and achieve the state's greenhouse gas limits. We're in the very early stages of implementing the CCA. That same year, the Clean Fuel Standard was passed, and I think our sponsors maybe referenced that in some of their opening remarks. The Clean Fuel Standard will curb pollution from the transportation sector, which accounts for about 45% of all of Washington's greenhouse gases. And finally, the Clean Buildings Act. I assume there's folks here from the building industry who know more about this than I do for sure, but this legislation adopts a new energy performance standard for existing commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet. And I want to just reference a couple more from the regulatory environment where we're at. This past session, House Bill 1589, known as the decarbonization bill, was passed. The governor did veto a section. Some of you are following that, might have seen that. But this is, sometimes it's easier to talk about this bill in terms of what it isn't than what it is. But what it is it does consolidate for PSE our gas and electric resource planning efforts. So some of you may be aware, as a utility, we are electric only here in Whatcom County, but as you move further south, we are gas and electric in some portions. So that's a tremendous system in and of itself. And so this legislation allows us to plan for what does the future look like in a carbon-free environment. And maybe more closer to home, there are climate action plans with City of Bellingham, Port of Bellingham. Whatcom County has its own climate action efforts. City of Ferndale, a couple of years ago, passed some greenhouse gas policies as well. So this environment, from a regulatory perspective, is really guiding and, in many respects, leading the changes that are before us. And so to talk a little bit about PSE's net zero carbon goals. I believe that's slide 4 for folks in the back of the room. So PSE operations, electric supply. So what we're wanting to achieve, as I mentioned a minute ago, is net zero in carbon emissions for all of our operations. Net zero carbon electric supply by 2030. As part of that, we will be, at the end of next year, we have a coal facility which will no longer be a part of the portfolio. So we're going to remove, I want to say maybe 20-25% of our generation capacity is coal today. That will be replaced by other sources. So notably, wind and solar are at the forefront of that. We do rely on natural gas for peaking capacity. And then just maybe just another reminder, 100% carbon-free electric supply by 2045. That's the really ambitious target. I mentioned we're a natural gas utility, again, not here locally, but we want to reduce customer end-use carbon emissions 30% by 2030. That's part of our net zero carbon goals. And then as we move even farther out beyond PSE reported emissions, electric vehicles, absolutely a big component of that as we look to reduce the transportation section contribution to greenhouse gas. LNG for marine and long-haul trucking. Renewable diesel was mentioned, but we're also looking at renewable natural gas and hydrogen for other low-carbon forms. So one of the things I did want to just reference that factors into this is how do we site and permit more renewable generation and transmission lines. That's a big part of, there's federal legislation that leans on that. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but the grid reliability, that's a big component of this as well. As we increase demand for electricity as it expands, how are we making sure the grid can support and maintain that? If we could move one more slide forward. So as we look towards 2030, we are making progress towards that goal for a carbon neutral generation. So I mentioned we'll be off of coal by the end of next year, and we're targeting a 60% renewable energy in our portfolio at that time. Some of you may have seen, how are we doing this? A lot of it is wind generation. In the last couple of years, we've added, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 2,000 megawatts of wind energy to the portfolio. So this is wind farms in Montana and eastern Washington, and that is a tremendous step forward in that goal. The other thing I didn't want to skip over is we have a community solar program. You'll see these projects in Bellingham and Whatcom County in the coming months, coming years, as we increase solar in our own community. And if we could go one more slide. Let's see. Thank you. I want to linger on this one a little bit as well, because I don't want to lose sight of how challenging this transition is, and I suspect my colleagues up here will probably mention this as well. The scale at pace at which we need to move forward on clean energy is unprecedented for what we're looking at. Again, some of our sponsors are referencing the work that they're doing to meet that demand. We do know demand for electricity is only going to increase over the next few years. How we achieve that via clean energy technologies, What does that look like from a siting perspective? That's going to be a challenge. Some of you may have followed the Horse Heaven Hills development in eastern Washington. I believe, due to a lot of disagreement, a lot of concern over the size of that facility, it was scaled down, I want to say about 30%. That's not insignificant, but when you're talking about a wind farm that's maybe 2,500 acres in scale, to make those projects work, they have to be big. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the impacts of that type of development that are felt in eastern Washington, we benefit. And so that is absolutely a concern moving forward. I mentioned the grid a minute ago. We do know it'll have to be expanded and modernized. And one thing, I've had a number of conversations with folks around the reliability of the grid. Some of you might recall, 2 months ago, at the end of January, was a significant cold weather event, some challenges with the system at that time. And that underscores and highlights really the challenges of where we're at with the grid and its ability to function under increased demand. And I would just, the last bullet there is, I mentioned the UTC and that sort of regulatory aspect. The underpinning of a lot of this is, how do we make this transition and have it be affordable? That's a real challenge, we know, and from an equity standpoint, that the changes that are about to occur with respect to this transition, we want to minimize the degree to which those are felt on named communities, so the most vulnerable aren't adversely affected by the change moving forward. And I might just go back to the title there. This clean energy future it's complex and it's not without its challenges. That will be very much part of what we try to tackle. And if we can move forward one more slide, maybe to give you a sense of what does this look like as we move forward. Right now, our generating capacity is about 6,500 megawatts. We know in the horizon it's probably going to be more like 15,000 megawatts. That is a tremendous increase. Meeting the CETA requirements on carbon neutral generation is going to require us to basically double by 2030, or I'm sorry, increase up by 2030. And then by 2045, we will have to have more than double to the 15,000 megawatts. So what does that look like? Just for scale, that's, an additional 8 peaking plants, 45 solar plants, 10 battery storage plants, all of those together to meet that demand. It's a pretty shocking number. And I would go back, though, to the slide from a few seconds ago that around where we're purchasing power. What does that look like? Looking at all of the resources available. It's not just going to be wind. It's not just going to be solar. It's going to be a combination. We're going to look at new technologies and how that grows. And as we, part of what's driving this demand is changing consumer preferences. Growth in electric vehicles is going to continue. I believe it has, sales anyway, have slowed a little bit, but we anticipate that is going to recover and move forward. State and local building codes will require more electrification. In Western Washington, I think there's probably a number of longtime Western Washington residents here. When I moved here, air conditioning was unheard of. Now you see more reliance on that, more interest in having that. And I think it might be about at time. I'm getting the look from Guy. I've got about 20 minutes more, but I won't keep going. I'll stop there. Maybe if we could just go to slide 20 really quickly. No? Yes. It's just a reminder It's okay. It's a complex problem. That's what I wanted to say. That's not it. That's okay. Look forward to any questions, and I'm not sure who's next, but... Okay. See, now the build-up's lost. It's not that exciting. There you go, the wind farm and everything. Anyway, thank you.
I'm probably going to end up tripping. I will be me. I've warned you 5, and I'm the one that's going to take a header on the light there. So make sure I'm in the right place. So how about a round of applause again for Brian? Thank you so much, PSE, for being here. And next up, to my left, we have Brad Barron of, I'm just going to shorten it, Barron Heating.
Yeah, that works.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Good. Everyone's in that food coma state right now. They state. As Guy said, I'm Brad Barron, CEO and partner of Barron Heating, AC Electrical Plumbing. I'm going to start with a quick story, and then I'll dive into the content. So back in 2016, I was working as an engineering manager for a manufacturing company, traveling across Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska about 3-ish weeks out of every month. Needless to say, my wife wasn't very happy. I was not home a lot. And then, on top of that, they wanted to pick us up and move us out to Columbus, Ohio, which is where they were headquartered. No offense to anyone if you're from Columbus, Ohio, but we love the Pacific Northwest and wanted to stay here. And about that time, my dad, John Barron, called and said, my business partner's retiring at Barron. Do you have any interest in coming in and working for the family business? And I said, glad you called. So fast forward to 2017, I joined the family business with an effort as the business development manager to grow our service offerings into the electrical and plumbing space. And ultimately travel less. Day one, walk in, my dad says, Brad, great news. I booked you and I and our general manager on a trip down to San Diego and we leave in 2 days. To which I picked up my phone, dialed my wife, Brooke, and handed it to my dad and said, you tell Brooke that, because that was not why I joined the company. The reason I share that story is on that trip, at that conference, a keynote speaker shared a pretty staggering statistic, which was that for every 5 baby boomers retiring, only 1 millennial or Gen Zer is entering the trades. And that's a challenge. And then he said, and he looked at the audience, and just like you are here today, and he said, and that's your problem. So fast forward 6 months into 2017, I sat across from our general manager at the time and made the proposition that Barron create our own technician school to attack that challenge, to which he sort of looked across the table, smiled at me, and said, that sounds like a job for the business development manager, which was me. So with that being said, I've got some photos up here on the slide that you guys can take a look at, and I'll reference through the presentation. The first is a picture of our HVAC service team centered there. And I want to start by saying I believe the future of energy is all about people. So I have a personal belief that we are in a climate crisis. I think technologically we're in a really exciting place to tackle that. But at the end of the day, engineers, manufacturers, service providers, skilled workers, laborers, utilities, government agencies, we're all going to have to come together to solve the challenges that lie ahead. And as Brian mentioned, they're not small mountains to climb. They are very, very large mountains to climb. But I believe we have the resources to get after it, and it's all about people. We have a couple folks here from Bellingham Technical College. Didn't know you'd be here, but glad you're here. BTC offers fantastic programs to students looking to get into the trades. They have an HVACR program and an electrician program that respectively each year graduate about 15 to 20 HVACR techs and electricians into the labor force. That, when you look at the 5 out and 1 in statistic, is not enough, right, to feed the needs and the demand. So essentially, the demand for skilled workers is far exceeding, the supply. So that was one of the reasons why we established the Barron Technician School in 2019. That's what our internal technician school is called, BTS. And since 2021, when we launched our HVAC service program, we've actually grown our technician base to over 30 service technicians serving the 5 counties that we serve, with an investment from Barron of over $1 million to do that. So it's not inexpensive to do that. With that being said, I believe as we look to the future of energy, that type of investment is going to be required from a lot of our local companies, one of which is sitting right down here for me in Andgar. We're doing some great work as well, trying to tackle this giant deficit, because at the end of the day, the future of energy is about people. I'm going to talk a little bit about regulations and codes just really briefly, not to bore you, but just to give you all a little bit of updates on what's going on, and then sort of wrap up talking a little bit about solar, heat pumps, and finish up with a conclusion. So from a regulation standpoint, if you go down one picture from the left, there's a picture of the refrigerant or manifold gauges. So from an EPA standpoint, just some updates. The EPA is implementing regulations right now to phase out hydrofluorocarbons with high global warming potential, also known as GWP. So what does that mean for manufacturers? HVAC manufacturers are now shifting to low GWP refrigerants in their products, and that requirement is by January 1st of 2025. Right now, and if anyone has been in the market for a heat pump system, you'll probably hear or would begin to hear folks talking about systems that have either R32 or R454B refrigerant. So those are going to be the two main HVAC industry refrigerants. So they're non-toxic, they are slightly flammable, and they have a lower burning velocity. So with all that being said, what happens when you have a major shift, right, in refrigerants that are actually what are helping these systems run? It's going to impact engineering, product management, supply chain, and you probably guessed it, ultimately cost, right? There's going to be a cost impact to the systems that are coming out. HVAC technicians, residentially and commercially, they're going to need training on how to handle the new refrigerant because it is flammable. So there's a safety component to that. And now everyone's going to be required to carry 2 or more types of refrigerant on their vehicles. So going out and servicing existing homes and buildings is going to become more challenging and ultimately more costly. And just a quick stat too, if you have a job and say you're installing a heat pump, it's not just an electrician that's doing that work. It requires 2 refrigeration technicians to set that unit and actually get it up and running and commissioned. So going back to our challenge of 5 out of the industry for every 1 in, it continues to amplify the need for skilled tradesmen and skilled tradeswomen. From a code standpoint, on the new construction side, if any of you are all familiar with new construction, there is a energy credit requirement per the Washington State Energy Code, or the WSEC. What does that require? We need 8 energy credits for a new construction home. I'll put a pin in this and come back to it later, but from a solar standpoint, and Brian talked a little bit about solar, over half of those credits, 4.5 to be exact, can be achieved with solar. So solar is going to be and will continue to be part of the future of energy. The credit path is reasonably achievable. However, we found at Barron that the combinations can be very confusing to home builders and also homeowners. So there's a lot of education that's going to have to go into that and continue to go into that as we move forward. Tighter house construction is now required. You might be going, what the heck does that mean? Tighter means less air changes per hour. So if you take the volume of air in a house, right, and the amount of times that essentially is replaced has to decrease. So those thresholds have been lowered as part of the new WSEC. And then there's additional testing requirements as well as mechanical ventilation requirements. As a result, construction costs, and we're seeing that, are continue to be driven higher. However, because of the green infrastructure going in, there is recognized savings. So the ROI varies, but we are seeing that savings. It's just out there a little ways. And then also, I think it's important to note that gas is still an option for water heating and space heating. However, it will not help with that credit amount that you need to hit. On the commercial side, the Washington State Energy Code is now shifting its focus to energy modeling and more efficient designs in the commercial space, such as the one we're sitting in today. There's an increase in third-party commissioning verification. Manufacturers are now being required to achieve higher equipment efficiencies. If you have an electric resistance system and it has to be upgraded, it has to be upgraded to a heat pump. So that's happening right now. And just for everyone's knowledge, a heat pump rooftop unit is significantly heavier than an electric or gas system, so there's going to be more electrical loads, and then we're seeing a lot more structural modifications needing to take place as these systems or rooftop units are being replaced in the commercial space. So again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but we're seeing that. There's a lot of good movement there, but it does lead to a need for more skilled laborers and, again, higher construction costs. There's a picture of installers doing a solar install down there in the bottom right. We have some fantastic incentives in Washington State, both from a state standpoint and a federal standpoint, that are, I think, are encouraging homeowners and building owners to look at going green and going solar. There's a 30% federal tax credit that can actually be applied to the principal of a loan if you finance it after the first 12 months to lower your monthly payment, something a lot of folks don't know, but you can do that. Washington State, sales tax exempt for solar installs, so another good big benefit. If you haven't heard of Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union, you might want to write that down if you're looking at energy smart upgrades for your whether it's solar, heat pump water heaters, heat pumps, high efficiency gas furnaces, et cetera. And again, the return on investment is there, and typically we're seeing it about the 10-year mark. All right, 2 more notes, and then I'll wrap up, try to keep myself on time. Electrification. So there is a huge, and we've talked about this, and I'm sure a number of folks here will talk about it today as well. There is a big movement toward electrification. I actually had the pleasure of serving with Brian on the Renewable Energy Technical Working Group with the city of Bellingham. Really brilliant, awesome minds coming together and thinking about how to tackle the challenges that lie ahead, and the efforts that we're trying to do in Washington State to be sort of a beacon for renewables. But that movement to electrification, and Brian mentioned it as well, it increases grid demand and dependence, so that can raise operating costs for homeowners and businesses. High efficiency equipment, things like heat pumps, and I know Aaron's going to talk more about heat pumps later. Energy production via solar, those are going to be required to meet new regulations, and I also believe they're going to be required to offset costs. So transitioning from electric resistance or an electric furnace to a heat pump can dramatically reduce the size of a solar array. For those in the room who don't know, heating, cooling of your house, #1 energy consumer, and water heating, #2. So we can tackle this right at the home, which is great. And then there's a lot of great energy efficient credits as well through the 25C home improvement credit, up to 30% back, max $3,200 credit. And there's energy audits with $150 credit back as well. So to conclude, from my standpoint, future of energy, all about people. We got federal, state, and local initiatives. We have electrification initiatives, and they're going to require more skilled workers. So my ask and my look to the future is this. We need more education regarding the trades, and I believe it has to start in middle school. It's too late. If we start talking to students about this in high school, they need to start understanding what can be in middle school. I believe there needs to be trade immersion classes and programs in high school, more of them. An expansion of public and private skilled training programs, whether that's through BTC, other trades programs, local companies like Barron and Andgar. And then finally, continued and additional incentives for homeowners and businesses, and PSC and Cascade Natural Gas have fantastic rebates and incentives for homeowners and businesses. That's it. Oh, sorry, I moved it.
I was like, oh,
I messed you all up.
somebody took my notes. Thank you, Brad. Next up, I am on the wrong page. Let's not start over, okay? Next up, we have Sean Hinson from Cascade Natural Gas. Come on up.
Thanks, Guy. Good afternoon, folks. Let me get started. Can we go to the next slide? That's my name, that's my title. I work for our external affairs team. I cover the 67 communities and 231,000 customers we serve in Washington State. Can I go to the next slide? So I've just got a quick agenda here. Basically, what I'm doing is covering kind of what Cascade is doing to comply with our decarbonization targets. Brian did a great job of kind of setting the table with, what's happened at the state level. So I just want to focus on what we're doing. So next slide. So first off, renewable natural gas. This is something that the Washington State Legislature encouraged utilities to undertake. They found that renewable natural gas provides a benefit to customers in the community, and they're supporting that development through HB 1257, which was passed in the 2019 session. Next slide, please. Renewable natural gas has a bunch of different benefits. It helps minimize waste. The process captures methane from natural biological processes such as decomposition of agricultural waste or landfills. So capturing that gas and then processing it into essentially biogas with a nearly identical composition to natural gas. It can be blended into our system. It takes methane out of the atmosphere, which is about 20 times more potent, though shorter in lifespan than the emissions from natural gas. So there's some environmental benefit there. It helps support resource adequacy. As one of the previous panelists mentioned, we've had cold snap events recently. There's more demand for energy. Bringing this stuff onto the system helps to alleviate that. And then lastly, it creates opportunities, building these digesters, building the infrastructure to connect them to the existing gas system, requires jobs, requires work. So there's some economic benefit there too. Next slide, please. So we have a few natural gas projects that we've been working on / have already brought online. We have projects under contract in Richland, Longview, Pasco, and then in Bend, Oregon. And we anticipate we'll have over 10 million, therms on our system by the end of 2025. And then we have several other projects in various stages of negotiation to bring more of that biogas to consumers. Next slide, please. So I also want to address some other developments that are a little bit further down the road. Hydrogen, as folks have mentioned, including two of our great sponsors. It's been identified as an important resource toward hitting our decarbonization targets in the state of Washington. It's wonderful that the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub was selected by the Department of Energy, and that's something that Cascade is paying very close attention to as that market develops. We plan to hopefully be a part of that. Next slide, please. And then this is an interesting one. This legislative session, HB 2131, which was sponsored by our hometown representative, Alex Rammel, allows for utilities to own and operate thermal energy networks in the state of Washington. These are great because they are, a great tool to reduce carbon. They use, fluid to conduct heat rather than combustion fuels. An analog to this, I think, would be the Bellingham waterfront project, the district energy over there. That's something that, or one of the ways you could create a thermal network, and that's something that we're, very interested in doing once the governor signs that bill. And then next slide. And then I've got some sources. If anybody's interested in these articles, happy to share them with you. And that's about all I have, pretty quick. So.
Caught me sleeping. God. So Sean, thank you so much. And just a little bit of housekeeping. I see some folks writing stuff down, not to peek over your shoulder, so I don't know if it's a question card, but if it is, if you could pass them to the edge. I fully expect, as we normally do, we have more questions than time for to get through them all. So if you get them in, we can start that process once all of the panelists are done. And so speaking of panelists, next up, we have Pam Brady, BP Cherry Point.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. Pam Brady, I'm Government Affairs Manager at BP Cherry Point Refinery. So it's a pleasure to be here. We're a proud member of the Chamber, have been for years. I brought a couple colleagues with me from BP, Tom Wolf, who's our Senior Government Affairs Manager on the West Coast, and then Nash Al-Badawi, who is a business development analyst. So you guys can help me on the Q&A, keep me honest. Great colleagues to work with at BP. To begin these slides, I'll just share with you a little bit about BP Cherry Point Refinery, just some facts and stats, and then we'll go over to how BP is anticipating the future of energy, kind of what our aims and ambitions are as BP on a global level. BP is a global company operating on every continent in the world but Antarctica. and then bring it back to what that means for Cherry Point Refinery. So Josh, if you could, oh, you read my mind, thank you. All right, so just the basic facts about BP at Cherry Point. We're operational in 1971, so that puts us at 53 years old now. Not quite as old as our neighbors, but we're all getting older at the same rate, right? We process crude oil into usable products, and we process renewable biofeedstocks into diesel. We get our crude from many sources. We can get crude from all around the world. You'll see tankers out on Puget Sound coming to our dock. We have a beautiful dock out on Puget Sound. It's got 2 wings. The south wing is in crude service. We bring in crude from Alaska. We bring in crude from anywhere in the world, really. But that has been a source of crude since we opened up, since the Trans Mountain Pipeline opened up just after we started operating. And then we have a pipeline, Trans Mountain Pipeline from Canada that delivers Canadian crude to the refinery, and we love that. Our kit, the refinery kit, really likes that kind of crude that it brings, and we've been able to use that since day one at the refinery. And then starting in 2013, we built a rail rack, and so we have the ability to bring in crude by rail, and a lot of the crude that comes in via rail is mid-continent crudes. Can be Canadian, could be Bakken, but it just brings it in, BNSF delivers, and we get crude that way. So we have some nice optionality. We make a lot of products. Josh, if you can go to the next one. We make a lot of jet fuel at the refinery. You can see, about 1,000 flights a day from Seattle to New York is kind of what we could produce on an average day. It's about 2.5 million gallons of gasoline or jet fuel, and that's most of the needs of SeaTac Airport. Most of the needs of Vancouver Airport. We also ship down to Portland International Airport. In addition to that, we're making 3.5 million gallons-ish of gasoline and 2.5 million gallons-ish of diesel. And also just propanes and butane. We have a calcined coke facility, so we take the coke, which is the bottom of the barrel, the heavy stuff, and we have a calciner. We make calcined coke, and we sell that to the world's aluminum industry. And that's a big part of our business at Cherry Point. And we know that we're a big part of the calcined coke business in the world. We believe that we supply about 10% of the world's demand of calcined coke. So, everything from ladders to aluminum cans and that kind of thing start their journey at Cherry Point Refinery. We'll go on to the next slide here. We know that we have a big economic footprint in Washington State and in Whatcom County. There's a lot of numbers on here, but I'll just share a few with you. In the last couple of years, we've had a lot of capital expense projects at Cherry Point. We've done some big building, and we've had a lot of vendor spend. We think in the last year that we've spent about $270 million with vendors in the area, and that's about 130 different vendors that service the facility. We've done some big projects. We built a hydrocracker improvement project, which was a new vac tower, essentially, in our hydrocracker. We built new cooling water towers, so we have better capacity for cooling. It keeps us a little bit more rateable in the summertime when the temperatures go up, and we can cool a little bit more efficiently. Both of those projects actually make us more efficient from an energy utilization standpoint, so that's great. And then we built, doubled our renewable diesel capacity, which I'll get to in a little bit. But then aside from that, the other number I wanted to point out is we know that a lot of people rely on our business, on our sector for jobs in Whatcom County. We have about 950-ish employees, and that changes all the time. And people watch interest rates, and then they tend to retire and that kind of thing. But anyway, we're right in there around 950. And then we have anywhere from 600 to 800 contractors in the gates daily. And then in turnarounds, when we do major maintenance periods, it can go up to like 2,500 or more contractors, depending on the workload. So we know that that means a lot to the people in Whatcom County. Next slide. And so now let's step back on this one and talk a little bit more about BP's aims and ambitions. And this is very much their carbon aims and ambitions. In 2020, BP announced that it would set out to become a net zero company by 2050 or sooner, and that it would help the world get there as well. And those are very ambitious goals. We changed our focus, really, as BP to becoming not just an oil company, but really an integrated energy company that pursues the production of different forms of energy. We plan to bring our operational emissions down as well by about 50% by 2050 or sooner. And we're decreasing the carbon emissions and the carbon intensity of the fuels we sell as well. We're doing this through investment. We've changed our investment strategy. We probably had 3% of our overall investments in 2019 going toward the low carbon transition businesses, and now we've increased that to about 23% in 2023. So it's quite an abrupt change, but we're really foot forward on trying to find the right kind of businesses that will be successful, that will help BP be successful, but continue along the energy transition. And so in that, we've got 3 pillars in our strategy that I'll just share with you briefly, and this is not a big secret, it's on our website. But the resilient hydrocarbons pillar is where the refining business fits in, and that's like the oil and gas production, the refining production. We still think, by 2050 we'll be using hydrocarbons, but we'll be using less of them. Another pillar of our business is the convenience and mobility side. So that's our retail side. And you may be familiar with AM/PM. That's a BP business here in the Northwest. We just acquired Travel Centers of America, which is a big truck stop. And there's a couple of them in Washington, but they're mostly Midwest. There's BP stations on the East. There's, the retail side, BP is making major investments in that so that we know that the way people fuel their cars is changing, and so we want to be able to hold that space a little bit differently and be foot forward on the transition to EV charging and mobility convenience, really. We actually do very well in the business of convenience where we sell hot dogs through AM/PM and that kind of thing. It's actually a great business for us. And then the low carbon energy side. There's some new developments in BP where we're building, new generation, low carbon generation. So we have Light Source BP, which is a big company, BP. We're doing offshore wind in a couple places in the world. We're exploring it here in the U.S. There's lots of focus and energy going into those transition businesses. The next slide. This is just a slide that shows you kind of the energy outlook for BP. And for those of you who really love to geek out on the numbers, I brought a handful of these energy outlook books for you. It's BP's economists put them together. And it just basically explores like the key trends and the uncertainties around the energy transition. And here in this slide, you can see there's a couple different scenarios that we're examining. And I don't need to get too much in the weeds other than to say in the last decade, or 20 years really, you can see that the global carbon emissions has increased. But now we believe that we are at a point in time where we will be decreasing. And under each of these scenarios, whether it's an aggressive decline, that's aligned with Paris, as you see in the blue line, or a more moderate or an accelerated decline in the green line, all of them are going down. And so when you think about that, we're going to be using less hydrocarbons in the future. We believe that we're kind of cresting that now and going to be coming down from here. What does that mean? What does that mean for Cherry Point? It's a business that makes hydrocarbons, and you can go to the next slide, and I'll share with you how we're holding that at Cherry Point. We believe that the refineries are, they're manufacturing hubs, and they are capable places to be able to transition just the same as other businesses will transition. And at Cherry Point, we believe that that will be in the biofuels space. So we've done a lot of work in that in the last handful of years with our renewable diesel plant, where we co-process renewable diesel. And we've looked at other opportunities, and some, we've decided to do, like doubling the capacity of our renewable diesel, and some we're deciding to put in pause mode for a while. We had discussed about a year ago that we were looking into expanding to build a standalone sustainable aviation fuels facility and a standalone green hydrogen facility, and we did a lot of work on those projects and have just recently decided that we would push pause on those. BP announced at that time that there were 5 sites around the world and that Cherry Point was one of them. And we would like to be, but we're going to wait for the other sites to go forward. So 2 in Europe will go forward first, and then we'll take our place behind them, hopefully, in the future. So The next slide is just renewable diesel. I've already shared a little bit about it, but we doubled our renewable diesel capacity. We produce in a co-processed way about 7,500 barrels a day, and that just displaces fossil diesel, and it just is the exact kind of same molecule that combusts similarly in diesel engines, and we sell that along the West Coast mainly, where we have low carbon markets that incentivize that production. And I'll just end on this slide. I see my time is out, but we aim to be a good neighbor, and it's because we have good neighbors in all of you. So we appreciate being a business here in Whatcom County. This happens to be a slide of the BP Heron Center down at Birch Bay State Park. We have a number of programs that we sponsor there throughout the summer for the community. It's just great to be a part of the community. Great to be here today, and happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Pam. Next up, Aaron Andgar. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. So we've talked about kind of macro ideas about obviously PSE, CNG, BP, energy as a big whole. What I talk about and what my daily business is talking to people, individual residential customers, one-on-one, and so helping to make those energy decisions. So the future for me, the future of energy is the culmination of many persons' individual choices. So let's talk heat pumps a little bit, actually a lot. Heat pumps are so many different things. So heat pumps, I don't know that everybody knows how heat pumps exactly work. And I'd like to talk about that, not to get into the weeds, not to get too much into the nitty gritty, but I think that heat pumps is a term that are used that a lot of people don't quite understand how they can be so versatile. So, see the next slide if you would. I think that got out of order, but they come in all different kinds of flavors. It's skinny ones, tall ones, boxy ones, cold climate, VRF, VRV. There's ducted, ductless, on-wall, in-ceiling, on-ceiling. There's HSPF and SEER and EER. There's COPs and OMG. I'm going to assume that not everybody knows how they work. So the best analogy that I have of how a heat pump exactly works is understanding how air conditioners work. Before I worked in this industry and started 21 years ago, I thought air conditioners pushed cold into a house, and that's how air conditioning came to be. But in fact, what the air conditioner is doing is stripping the heat out of the air, putting it through the air conditioner outside, so what you have left is cold in the house. So air conditioners and heat pumps kind of act like sponges that draw heat out of the air and move it from one place to another. Now, heat pumps are air conditioners that reverse. So heat pumps reverse, you draw the heat out of the atmosphere outside, free energy, it's just sitting out there at 40 degrees, and you're able to draw it up and then squeeze it inside the house, and the amount of energy you're doing to expend that is very little. And so that's why they get to be so efficient. Now, as temperatures get colder and colder and your heat need is up and up, there becomes a point called a balance point where the heat pump can't quite get up to where your heat design is and needs either assistance or substitution. So a balance point is very critical, and that's where you choose to supplement and et cetera, et cetera. So traditional heat pump system, and the one that we're talking about for electrification, is going to be an all-electric system where the heat pump works, and then it needs a little bit of assistance where the heat pump is drawing energy, and then you turn on a high energy electric resistant heat, like a air handler or electric furnace. And so they're running simultaneously. For a lot of homes, including mine, that works really well because I've got a lot of power for the size of house that I have. And so they work together. But for a lot of homes that maybe don't have the electrical power or have a greater need, greater house, inefficient house because of insulation or building codes, they can't quite provide enough for the amount of power to the house. So typically it's going to be 200 amps to most houses. Let's see. So there exists some people, especially toward the fingertips of the electrical grid, and it's going to be people who maybe have a bigger house or a very inefficient house. They're going to need to have, I see a lot of hybrid systems put in, and anybody know hybrids and have heard of them before? Okay. So there's a lot of homes that can't quite handle an all-electric system because they may just not have the power for it. So you have a system where the heat pump reaches its balance point, and then you switch over to fossil fuel. And that, being someone, I've been doing this for 21 years, there's a lot of houses that actually need to have that type of system, and it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to be able to have electrical as a backup in a retrofit situation. New construction, that's easy to design. Retrofit, that's what I work with mostly, and that's something that I see on the daily basis. So that's often going to be a choice for people who can't go all electric. Ductless heat pumps, we've heard a lot about those. Ductless heat pumps are going to be the new darlings, or they are the new darlings, basically, in the Pacific Northwest. They've been around for a long time, mostly used in sunrooms at first, and they're just this obscure thing. And now, because they're very, very efficient, they're used in most households on new construction and building. They're going to be a great solution for someone who has baseboard heat, where you can, something like 75% of your heat need is in the great room area. Most people use their bedrooms a little bit cooler. So you can get one or you can get multiple, and that's going to offset your electrical usage, because ductless heat pumps in general run off of about 1/3 or even up to 1/4 of what a baseboard will run on. So that's going to be a very good individual choice for those people running on baseboards, wood heat, fireplace heat, and I still see cable heat in people's houses. It's amazing what's still out there. One other type of heat pump I want to really kind of differentiate, the newer technology and everything. We talked about heat pumps and how they work and the balance point and all that, and how most of them will drop off and just have a hard time getting to temperature at a certain point. There are some heat pumps that do better in cold climates, such as our environment. So can you change the slide? So this kind of shows you some of the work that we go through. There's a balance point chart over on the right-hand side, and that's going to be showing kind of bell curve of temperatures and how they work in this area. Cold climate heat pumps, and there are some special ones in VRV and VRF that they don't really have as much of a drop-off when it gets cold. And when you talk about those systems, and I wish people knew about their existence more, because you don't rely on electric resistance heat or fossil fuel, and can rely mostly on that heat pump only when the temperatures get cold. And you're talking about just a lot less energy consumption, especially when it gets cold. And that's going to help the grid. That's going to help just pretty much your wallet and everything else. So I just want to make sure that people know that cold climate heat pumps really provide quite a benefit to all of us in the industry. Yeah, thanks for, he's nodding his head, he knows. All right. So, next slide, if you would. I know we're talking about the future of energy, but I also want to respect the past. So, when's the last time that you changed your filter? Anybody? Has it been in the last month? Has it been in the last 3 months? Yeah, and a 1-inch filter on a furnace can only last for about a month. Not a year. It's a month. So I want to just talk about, we talk about the biggest, the baddest, the newest, the new refrigeration and all this sort of stuff, and VRF and VRV and cold climate. And if you don't do the basic maintenance of changing your filter and keeping that updated, making sure that the refrigerant charge on your heat pump or air conditioner is going to be working optimally on your gas furnace, you defeat all the things that the energy savings that you can have. So getting down to the basics of maintenance and filtration and everything like that. Think of it as going for a marathon and you're having to wear a mask, as we all did, and you're going through a dust storm. How well are you going to be able to run, and how far are you going to be able to run without detriment to your body? So same thing, it's just making sure that maintenance, I know it sounds simple, we never floss like we're supposed to. Like, let's just make sure that we're up and keeping on maintenance. So perhaps I didn't go my full 10 minutes, but I'd like to be able to donate that back. And anyway, thank you very much.
How about one more round of applause for our entire Okay, so now we're going to move to the Q&A, and I'm looking at the time, and I have a commitment to get everybody out by 1, because I know some of you still want to network in the back there. So we're going to get through as many of these as possible. First one, I think we actually got before Pam finished, but, and again, you can just stay sharing the mics there. What is renewable diesel?
Renewables. Oh, thank you. This way. It is a diesel that's made from a biomass-based feedstock. So we use beef tallow or soybean oil because we have those established in low-carbon credit programs as feedstocks that will give you credits. But there's really any triglyceride you can use, and you process it in the same way that you would crude oil in a slightly different way than we do crude. But it's basically it's something that's grown, died and was extracted, but not in the Paleocene era. So the only way you can tell them apart is by carbon dating. So that's actually how our regulators know that we're using renewable diesel, because it's co-processed, so it's commingled. They'll take a sample, it'll take a couple of weeks, but they'll verify that, carbon-14 dating shows that you have some new matter in there as opposed to something really old.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so this next one is for Brian, PSE. With PSE working to comply with CETA, what is the estimated percentage increases of electrical power in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a lot. Gosh, I'm honestly not sure how to answer that. So I think what I would tell you is, as we remove coal, that's about 20-25% of our generating portfolio today. So we have to replace that with a renewable source or a reliance on natural gas, but we're moving towards replacing that 25% with a non-emitting source, but also meeting the growing demand. Satpal, you are good at math. Can you help me out here? Care to do that?
Speaking time
Yeah,
in a
okay,
month and a half, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure I can answer that. Whoever asks that, let's touch base afterwards, and I can see if I can point you in the right direction. Because I suspect that there's probably a resource.
I was listening to your presentation. It's complex.
It's complex. I'm a political science major. I'm not into math. That's the thing.
Okay, so this one could be for any panelist, and I think it speaks to maybe some of the topics that we didn't cover today. So free for all. Are there any pumped hydro projects being considered locally? I'm looking at you. I'm not going to give you the mic, but no. Okay, no is the general consentment there. Maybe another opportunity.
I might just, if I
Yeah,
could.
go for it.
So PSE has a hydro facility at Baker Lake, and what we're looking at doing is making that more efficient. So if you've ever driven by a hydro facility, you'll often see what appear to be leaks. They're not going to crack the dam and flood the community, but as the geology changes of these facilities, as they age, as concrete expands or shrinks and moves, there are efficiencies that you lose. And so we're undergoing an effort to make that facility more efficient, retain more of the water, generate more power. But I don't see new hydro as
Okay.
on the horizon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
So PUD near Mount Baker for geothermal, just for everybody in the audience. Thank you, Sat Paul. Okay, next question. Do you, and this is to anyone, I will say anyone and not everyone, because I can imagine some of you are like, I'm not answering that. So, do you feel the requirement of regulations being placed on carbon reductions with specific timeframes is the only mechanism to drive change regarding, or let's say regarding like emissions, or do you feel technology and societal change is more effective to drive this change, possibly in a more organic method? Come on, someone. Okay, Pam.
All of the above. This isn't either or. I think you said, or do you think is better? Actually, I think we need all of the above. I think we need to have the right kind of regulation that drives investment in this space. We certainly have interest by the people and populations want to be able to consume lower carbon energy, getting the right mix of regulation, and the very same kind of regulations that regulate our business also are regulating high tech. And you know, how do you drive innovation into the ecosystem? I think is a very important question for our legislators. So there has to be innovation, there has to be technology advancements, but there are also, you know, very useful policies that help drive lower carbon emissions as well.
Any other takers? I kind of agree. I would have to, since you guys aren't talking, I guess I'll talk. I have to imagine, because we have a variety of industry sectors. That was the goal to today. Hear multiple voices, multiple perspectives. And I have to assume different demands, different ends of the market will react differently. That's what we see across multiple industries. Just adding my input as a non-expert. Okay, final question, and we give everybody some time, but this one might take the time, and I hope each of you would have an answer to this. As we move toward a lower carbon energy market, what keeps you up at night?
Do the mics work?
Yeah.
I can start going back to what I shared earlier. The inability for us to be able to meet the demands that our residential consumers, our commercial consumers, and just our general community is going to need. It is difficult to find folks that want to get into the trades, that have that desire and ambition and tenacity, and we need to do a better job educating folks that you can earn a fantastic six-figure wage being an electrician, an HVAC technician, a plumber, folks that are going to be putting in these low carbon emitting, high efficiency systems. So yeah, from the CEO's desk at Barron, I would say that is what keeps me up at night.
Okay.
I think it's the meeting the expectations. This is a tremendous shift. It's bigger than even generational, and so meeting the expectations in terms of how we achieve this, and I think maybe to that point, the urgency with which we must meet it. I share your comment. You know, we are in a climate crisis. The clock is ticking, so it's meeting expectations, and it's our ability to meet that expectation. And I'm an incrementalist at heart. I think so. You know, steady, slow progress is what I believe in, and I think the expectation is that we're going to change fundamentally this massive sector really quickly, and that's what keeps me up at night.
Sure. I would echo some of the other panelists' sentiments. I would say, in my case, grid resilience. As somebody mentioned earlier, we had the MLK Day cold snap. You see rolling blackouts in other states. Just ensuring that we've got a reliable grid, enough energy for folks. I think that's something that somewhat gets taken for granted in this country, but We need sort of an all-of-the-above approach to ensure that, we can continue to drive economic growth, continue to ensure people are kept warm or kept cool, depending on the season, and, while also meeting our decarbonization goals.
I'm an optimist at heart, and I believe in us, right? I believe that people have the ability to fix this problem. There's brilliant people thinking about solutions right now. There's less brilliant people, like me, who all I can do is conserve. But I can do that. Like, there's a role for each of us to play in order to enable this energy transition. I think we'll get there through technology innovation. I think we'll get there through the support of policy and conservation. But it's not an intractable problem. And so that actually, I don't get kept up at night about it. I'll sleep on that.
For me, I'm going to go ahead and echo what Sean had to say. For looking at heat pump design on the residential side, and I talked about all electrical heat pumps, which I know a lot of city wants to go toward and county wants to go for, and all of that. And I have that system. I enjoy that system. But I'm afraid of if everybody went all electric and the grid resiliency at this point without that innovation yet in place is that what scares me, because a heat pump works together and draws on an all-electric system. You're drawing 30 to 40 amps on the heat pump, and then probably somewhere around 100 amps just for a basic setup on a 2,300 square foot house. So you're drawing, about 140 amps out of a 200 amp panel. And if everybody was doing that plus all their household use, I'm kind of scared of brownouts. That's what keeps me up at night. So having the availability of that flexibility of fuel with hybrid systems, or at least systems that are cold climate that can run and use power better without as much electrical requirement when it gets cold, that's what scares me. But anyway, I don't want to beat that down. But.
Well, how about a final round of applause for our panelists? And as I mentioned earlier, these events would not be possible without certain folks and more specifically sponsors. So I want to shout out to Veritas Media, our presenting series sponsor for all of the 2024 speaker series. Round of applause, Veritas. And of course, the two sponsors that felt this topic was important enough to say yes to this event, our event partners with Phillips 66 and Alta Gas. How about a round of applause? I do want to thank the staff here at the Reef for always doing such an amazing job. Round of applause for the team. And special shout out to Sarah, our program events coordinator, for doing all the work for this. And again, as it was mentioned earlier, thank you, Alta Gas. We have two more speaker series that are planned that you can go online and register right now. We have State of the State, our annual legislative update. So we have confirmed the three electeds from the 42nd district, and that will be April 11th. And then, of course, we have State of the City of County, where we'll actually give Sat Paul the microphone, and that will be May 8th. So with that, I think there's some booths in the back in the lobby, and so again, continue to chit-chat and network and meet someone that you don't know. And again, thank you, our panelists. Thank you, all of you, for attending, and have a wonderful day.